Here's something that's going to sound completely backwards. Your worst day probably taught you more than your best day ever did. I know. Right now you're thinking, that's easy to say when you're not the one face down in the dirt, but stick with me for the next 15 minutes because I'm going to show you something that will fundamentally change how you look at every bad thing that happens to you. Most people treat failure like it's radioactive waste. They want to bury it, forget about it, pretend it never happened. But here's what they're missing. Failure isn't your enemy. It's your most brutal and honest teacher. And the people who figure this out, they don't just bounce back, they bounce forward. Today, I'm going to give you a simple 3-step framework that turns every setback into a setup. By the end of this video, you'll have a tool that makes you genuinely excited about your next failure. Not because you're a masochist, but because you'll know exactly how to extract every ounce of value from it. But first, let me tell you why everything you've been taught about dealing with failure is wrong. Section 1. The failure paradox. We live in a culture obsessed with success stories. Every entrepreneur talks about their big wins. Every athlete celebrates their championships. Every influencer shows you their highlight reel. But here's the dirty secret nobody wants to admit. The real learning happens in the valleys, not on the mountaintops. Think about it. When everything's going perfectly, what are you actually learning? That your current approach works? That you're doing things right? Maybe, but you're not learning anything new. You're not being forced to adapt, to grow, to figure out what you're made of. Success is comfortable. Success feels good. But success is also a lousy teacher because it doesn't challenge your assumptions. It doesn't expose your blind spots. It doesn't force you to level up your game. Failure, on the other hand? Failure is the world's most expensive education, and most people are too proud to pay attention in class. Here's the psychology behind why we avoid extracting lessons from failure. Our brains are wired to protect our ego. When something goes wrong, our immediate response is either to blame external circumstances or to beat ourselves up so badly that we never want to think about it again. Both responses are defense mechanisms, but both responses also rob us of the most valuable data we'll ever get about ourselves, our strategies, and our blind spots. The most successful people I know have one thing in common. They have an almost supernatural ability to separate their identity from their results. When they fail, they don't see it as I'm a failure. They see it as this approach failed, and now I have incredibly valuable information about what doesn't work. That shift in perspective, that's where the magic happens. Section 2. The data goldmine. Let me give you a different way to think about failure. Every time something goes wrong, you're getting access to data that you literally cannot get any other way. When you succeed, you know one thing. Your approach worked this time, under these specific circumstances, with these particular variables. That's useful, but it's limited. When you fail, you get a much richer data set. You learn about your decision-making process under pressure. You discover which of your assumptions were wrong. You identify gaps in your knowledge, your preparation, or your execution. You see exactly where your systems broke down. Most importantly, you get to see who you really are when things get tough. And that information, that's priceless. But here's the problem. Most people are so busy either wallowing in self-pity or frantically trying to move past the failure that they never actually extract the lessons. They're sitting on a gold mine of insights and they're treating it like toxic waste. The difference between people who grow from failure and people who get crushed by it isn't talent, luck, or even resilience. It's their ability to systematically extract value from the experience. And that's exactly what I'm going to teach you how to do. But before we get to the framework, you need to understand something crucial about how your brain processes difficult experiences. When something goes wrong, your brain immediately starts looking for someone or something to blame. This is evolutionary programming. In the wild, if something threatened your survival, you needed to quickly identify the threat so you could avoid it in the future. The problem is, in our modern world, this blame-first response often prevents us from seeing our own role in what happened. And if you can't see your role, you can't learn from it. The people who get the most value from failure have learned to bypass this automatic blame response. Instead of asking who's at fault, they ask, what can I learn? Instead of asking, why did this happen to me, they ask, what does this teach me about myself and my approach? This shift from victim thinking to learner thinking is the foundation of everything we're going to talk about next. Section 3, the 3-step extraction framework. All right, let's get practical. Here's the 3-step framework that will turn every failure into a growth accelerator. Step 1, the forensic analysis. Within 48 hours of any significant setback, sit down and conduct what I call a forensic analysis. This isn't about beating yourself up. It's about getting clinical and objective about what happened. Ask yourself these specific questions and write down the answers. What specific actions did I take that contributed to this outcome? What assumptions did I make that turned out to be wrong? What information did I have that I ignored or misinterpreted? What information did I not have that would have changed my decisions? What emotions influenced my decision-making, and how? If I could go back, what would I do differently with the same information I had then? Notice that last question. It's crucial. Don't Monday morning quarterback with information you didn't have at the time. That's not useful. Focus on what you could have done better with what you knew then. The key here is brutal honesty. If you're not willing to be honest about your role in what happened, you're not going to learn anything useful. Step 2, pattern recognition. This is where most people stop, but this is actually where the real value begins. One failure in isolation might be bad luck or circumstances beyond your control, but patterns? Patterns reveal your systematic weaknesses. Look at your last 3 to 5 significant setbacks. What themes do you see? Do you consistently underestimate how long things will take? Do you avoid difficult conversations until they become crises? Do you make decisions based on what you hope will happen rather than what's likely to happen? Do you ignore red flags when you really want something to work out? These patterns are your growth edge. They're showing you exactly where you need to level up. Most people hate discovering their patterns because it means they can't blame external circumstances anymore. But here's the thing, if it's your pattern, it's also under your control to change. Step 3, the implementation protocol. Here's where theory meets reality. Based on your forensic analysis and pattern recognition, you're going to create what I call an implementation protocol. This isn't a vague commitment to do better next time. This is a specific, actionable plan for how you'll handle similar situations differently. For each pattern you identified, create a specific trigger that will remind you to apply your new approach. A concrete action you'll take when you encounter that trigger, and a way to measure whether your new approach is working. For example, let's say you identified that you consistently agree to unrealistic deadlines because you hate disappointing people. Your implementation protocol might look like this. Trigger: anytime someone asks me to commit to a timeline. Action: I will say, let me check my calendar and get back to you within 24 hours, instead of immediately agreeing. Measurement: track how often I hit my committed deadlines over the next month. The key is making it specific and measurable. Vague intentions don't change behavior. Specific protocols do. Section 4, the reframe. Now I want to talk about something that might sound weird, learning to get excited about failure. I'm not suggesting you become a failure-seeking missile. I'm suggesting you reframe failure from something that happens to you into something that happens for you. Every failure is market research. Every setback is user feedback on your current approach. Every disappointment is your reality, giving you incredibly valuable information about what needs to be adjusted. When you start thinking about failure this way, something interesting happens. You stop being afraid of it. And when you stop being afraid of failure, you start taking bigger risks, trying more things, and moving faster toward your goals. Most people are paralyzed by the fear of failure because they see it as evidence that they're not good enough, smart enough, or capable enough. But what if failure is just evidence that you're trying things that matter? The people who accomplish extraordinary things don't fail less than average people. They fail more. But they also learn more, adapt faster, and use each failure as fuel for the next attempt. This is why your worst day might be your best teacher. Not because suffering is inherently valuable, but because difficult experiences force you to confront reality in a way that comfortable experiences never do. When everything's going well, you can coast on your existing strategies and assumptions. When everything's falling apart, you have to get honest about what's not working and why. That honesty, that's the beginning of growth. Here's something else to consider. The lessons you learn from your failures are uniquely yours. Anyone can read a book or watch a video about success strategies, but the insights you extract from your own setbacks, those are custom built for your specific situation, your personality, and your goals. That makes them incredibly powerful. Section 5. Real-world application. Let me show you how this works in practice with a real example. A few years ago, I launched a product that completely bombed. I'm talking spectacular failure. 6 months of work, significant financial investment, and maybe 12 people actually bought it. My first instinct was to pretend it never happened and move on to something else, but I forced myself through the 3-step framework. The forensic analysis was brutal. I discovered that I had fallen in love with my solution before I really understood the problem. I had made assumptions about what people wanted based on what I thought they should want, rather than actually talking to them. The pattern recognition was even more uncomfortable. Looking at my previous projects, I saw that I consistently got so excited about building things that I skipped the validation phase. I was a serial solution-first thinker. My implementation protocol was simple. Before I spend more than a week building anything, I have to have conversations with at least 10 people who have the problem I think I'm solving, and I have to hear them describe the problem in their own words before I propose any solution. That failure taught me more about product development, market research, and my own blind spots than 2 years of success ever could have. The next product I launched, it generated more revenue in its first month than the failed product made in its entire lifespan. That's the power of treating failure as data instead of defeat. Here's what I want you to understand. Your worst experiences aren't punishment. They're not evidence that you're not cut out for what you're trying to do. They're not signs that you should give up. They're your most valuable teachers, but only if you're willing to pay attention in class. The 3-step framework I just gave you, forensic analysis, pattern recognition, and implementation protocols will transform how you relate to failure, but only if you actually use it. So here's your immediate action step. Think about a recent setback or disappointment. Not something traumatic or deeply personal, but a professional or goal-related failure that still stings a little. Right now, before you watch another video or check your phone, grab a piece of paper and spend 15 minutes applying step 1 of the framework. Conduct a forensic analysis on that experience. Ask yourself, what specific actions did I take that contributed to this outcome? What assumptions did I make that turned out to be wrong? What would I do differently with the same information I had then? Don't worry about steps 2 and 3 yet. Just start with the forensic analysis. Because here's what I've learned. Once you start extracting value from your failures, you become addicted to the process. It's incredibly empowering to realize that nothing is ever wasted if you're willing to learn from it. Your worst day is waiting to become your best teacher. The only question is whether you're ready to enroll in the class. If this changed how you think about failure, hit that like button and let me know in the comments about a time when a failure taught you something valuable. I read every comment and I'd love to hear your story. And if you want more nonsense strategies for turning obstacles into opportunities, subscribe and hit that notification bell. I post new videos every week that cut through the fluff and give you tools you can use immediately. Remember, the goal isn't to avoid failure. The goal is to fail forward faster. Now stop watching videos and go analyze that setback. Your future self will thank you for it.